Hello? Anybody here? Let's begin. This week's Parsha is Parsha's Achrei. And in the Parsha, it says, we've spoken about this pasuk many times before, and I was thinking about something, maybe something novel we can think through together regarding a subject that we talked about before. But it says in the pasuk, it says, V'chai behem, you should live by the mitzvos. You should live by the mitzvahs. So the Gemara in Tractate Yuma on page 85b says, "V'chai b'hem," should live by the mitzvahs. V'lo sheyamas b'hem, you should not die by the mitzvahs. Rashi tells us in Tractate Sanhedrin, page 74, that the Rabbanu Shalom Hashem doesn't want to lose a neshama. Hashem doesn't want that a Jewish person should die just because to keep his Torah. So in order, if it means that a person will die to keep the Torah, he doesn't have to keep the Torah. The Torah should be transgressed. The Gemara is specifically talking about, the Gemara in Yuma is specifically talking about the mitzvah of keeping Shabbos, but that applies to all mitzvahs, with the exception of the three cardinal sins, like we said, like the Gemara says over there in Sanhedrin, page 74. So because Hashem would rather that a yid should stay alive than a yid should die. It's more important to him they should stay alive than do a mitzvah. That's what Rashi says over there. So anyway, so I was thinking, so the Gemara, one of the three cardinals is murder. A person is not allowed to commit murder in order to save themselves. That's what the Gemara over there explains. Gemara says, and obviously the V'chai b'hem doesn't apply in that situation. But Rashi explains over there, there's a whole discussion, Rishayim, why this is the case. Okay, so why this is the case? That the V'chai b'hem, you should live by them, does not apply in that case. The Gemara simply says, "My chaz is the damach sumuk tvei, dilma damach didei sumuk tvei." How did you see that your blood is better than his? Maybe his blood is better than yours. So what right do you have to sacrifice him in order to save yourself? Maybe you should sacrifice yourself in order to save him, right? So therefore, a person is not allowed to commit murder in order to save themselves. Okay, fine. That's the subject that we're going to talk about, but we're going to get there.
So I apologize if I can ask a question. How do we then substantiate or defend the right to kill during a war?
Oh, so we talked about this in the past also. So that if it's a war campaign, it depends on what kind of war campaign is, and the person is killing in self-defense, etc. That's you're allowed to kill people in self-defense, and if a person is a pursuer to save somebody else. But we're talking about here the case over there that the Gemara is speaking about is that if a bully comes to a person, he says, "I'll kill you if you don't kill so and so." So Rav over there said that you're supposed to say to the bully, "Kill me first." Not allowed to kill so and so in order to save yourself. That's the specific case that we're talking about over there. Okay, so murder is sanctioned depending on the situation, but in that case, it's not sanctioned. The person can't just spill somebody else's blood. And we're going to talk about this particular inyan, but we're going to get there in a sort of strange way. And this is what I mean. So let's see over here. We have at the beginning of the Shulchan Aruch, Even HaEzer, at the beginning of the Code of Law dealing with Even HaEzer dealing with women's issues. At the beginning there, the notes of the commentary, the Chachma Shlomo, is an interesting question, which has nothing to do with our discussion at all, but we have something that we want to glean from over there. He says like this. He says, "Nistapakti, I once had a question. If somebody raises a child in their house, which is not their own biological child, did they fulfill the mitzvah of prurevu, of be fruitful, of having children with that? Because given the Amru Chazal, since the rabbis say Megadol Yosem Yisayim B'Soich Beis, since the Gemara says in Megillah and other places that a person, since the Gemara says in Megillah HaMegadol Yosem Yisayim B'Soich Beisoy Ma'ala Labakas of Kilu Yoldo, if a person raises their child in a child in their house, even if it's not their child, it's considered as if they gave birth to them. So then we can say maybe that if it's considered as if they gave birth to them, it's as if they fulfilled the mitzvah of having children. He says, or maybe we'll say it's like you having a child, but it's not really having a child. It's not mamish having a child. Well, it's a pruruvu. And he says, and maybe you don't fulfill the mitzvah of pruruvu in such a case. This is his question. How serious are Chazal, how serious are the rabbis when they say that if a person, how serious are the rabbis if they say that if a person raises an orphan in their house, it's considered as if they gave birth to him. How serious are they about that? Does it really mean that it's as if, but not actually, or maybe actually? It's like as if they gave birth to them, and therefore they fulfill the mitzvah approval. So he says like this. He says, "Well, to me it appears as that totally bepluktas adrisha imatas." To me, it appears that this is going to be contingent on the dispute between the prisha or the drisha and the taz. Biyor de simulation base. The das hadrisha, the opinion of the drisha is the kol makam denemer ki ilu. Anytime it says, the opinion of the drisha is anytime it says in Shas the words ki ilu, it's as if. Ein hamukish shava elamakish lo. He holds that it's as if, but not exactly like it. It's like it, but not exactly the same thing. That's the opinion of the drisha. V'ataz choylek. The Taz disagrees. The Hu Shava Mamish, he holds that it's exactly the same thing. It's exactly whenever it says Ki'ilu as if, it's like exactly the same thing. Let's give an example. The Gemara says in Tractate Shabbos, for example, 105b, the Gemara over there says, Amishaber Ki'ilu b'chamosa, if somebody breaks dishes while they're angry, is key. It's as if they're it's as if they're idol worshippers. So according to the drisha, it's going to be as if, but not really not worshiping idols. They're not actually bowing down to an idol. They're angry. But according to the Taz, it's going to be the Taz is going to consider as if that's avodah zarah. That's worshiping idols. So therefore he says hachinami la drisha. To the drisha, let's say even the enu shava mamish. According to the drisha, it's not exactly the same thing. Even though the Gemara says it's as if you gave birth to the orphan, but you didn't actually give birth to him biologically, and therefore you don't fulfill the mitzvah of procreation. But according to the opinion of Tashu Shava Mamish, the Taz holds that it's exactly the same thing. As Yotze B'dei Pru, perhaps in that case, the Taz would hold you fulfill the mitzvah of procreation by raising an orphan in our house. Okay. He says, so according to the Drisha, it doesn't work. According to the Drisha, it doesn't work. Person raises, according to the Drisha, it doesn't work. A person raises an orphan in a house, they don't fulfill the mitzvah puravu, they have to have a child. Correct? That's it. But he says, Mikom Makam Afla Drisha, even according to the Drisha, Mikom Makam Havirakim Lo Hoilet Klal. But according to Drisha, maybe you could say not. Maybe if a person has a biological child who they didn't raise, let's say Avalim Hoilet Umesu, let's say a person had a child and the child died, according to the Drisha. So they didn't raise the child. Let's say the child ran away, right? Or was kidnapped or whatever. But the Gilo Yasmi Soma, and then they had an orphan in their house. Then they fulfilled the mitzvah puravu, by the kind puravu. The Maman of Shach, either way, according to the Drisha, it works. Why? Because in Be'inin Leda, if you're going to say that the Torah requires, in order to fulfill the mitzvah of procreation, the Torah requires that he should give biological birth. So Hari Hoylet, he did give biological birth. Mamish. But after Lo Godlam, even though, what are you going to say? But he didn't raise them, and the Torah requires him to raise them. But still, Hari Higdal Yosef Yisom, he did raise an orphan in his house. Even though, okay, you'll say, but he didn't give birth to the person he raised. But he raised, but he raised them at least. Either way, he fulfills the obligation. This is the Chacham Shlomo says he holds that this is the din.
Rabbi, just one quick question. What about a case where, let's say, a father abandons the mother, the child before the baby's born, right? And so the father doesn't raise the child, he's the,
Conceiver.
He gives birth to the child.
She gives birth to the child, he leaves before the baby's born, but okay,
right.
And he's out of the picture, he goes off doing whatever he's doing, right? So he didn't raise the child.
Right.
Did he fulfill the mitzvah by impregnating?
I would guess to say yes, because I would say that I would say that the Chacham Shlomo would probably agree that the only question is that if you, there's no question that you have to, according to the Drisha, who says it's not exactly the same thing. Raising an orphan is not exactly like having a child, right? The Drisha will say that, of course, having the child biologically is having the child. You have a child. But the question is, do you have to also raise him?
Right. So if you do have to, then the person who abandons their child. No.
If he agrees that you can just have biologically the child without raising him.
And you've done the mitzvah.
So you've done the mitzvah. The question is though whether if you raise him. No, maybe you're right. According to the way we said it, it's either way. Because he says, what happens if he says, what if you had him but you didn't raise him? Right. So according to the Drisha, you would not, there's a question on whether you would fulfill the mitzvah or not. The Drisha will say maybe not. Maybe you need to have the child biologically and raise him in order to fulfill the mitzvah. Okay. Anyway, so this is nothing to do with our discussion. This is the discussion. The Gemara says here. The Gemara says that we have machlokes. We have a dispute between the Drisha and the Prisha.
Although I've never heard of these commentators.
The Drisha is a commentary on the Torah, and the Taz is the commentary on the Shulchan Aruch on the Code of Law.
Okay.
So the commentaries. How they get to their conclusions, we're not going to get into tonight. We've spoken about this in the past, but this is what they hold. They hold that anytime let's give another example. The Gemara says in Tractate Sanhedrin on page 19b, the Gemara says that the Gemara says like this. Amar Rab Shmuel bar Nachmani, Amar Rab Yochanan, I think, if I'm not mistaken. Kol Amelamed ben Chaveroi Torah, whoever teaches his friend's son Torah Malav Al Kosav Kilu Yoda. The pasuk considers if he gave a birth to him. So whoever teaches this, let's say a Rebbe in yeshiva teaches somebody else's son Torah, it's considered as if he gave birth to him. So according to the Drisha, the Gemara doesn't mean it's actually the same thing. It just means it's a comparison. According to the Taz, it's mamish the same thing. So maybe according to the Taz, we'll say that you could fulfill the mitzvah puravu by teaching your friend's son, your friend's son Torah, because the Gemara says that it's as if you gave birth to him. Maybe according to the Chacham Shlomo, the way the Chacham Shlomo wants to understand literally the dispute between the Taz and the Drisha, maybe it's going to be with this machlokes. Okay, so now like this. Let's ask according to the Drisha. According to the Drisha, it says it's not mamish the exact same thing. Let's ask according to the Drisha. If it's not mamish the exact same thing, then how is it similar to it? Right? In what way is it similar to it? It's either you give birth to the person or you don't. So what does it mean that it's similar to it? What does that mean? Let's ask the Drisha. Now, according to the Taz, and we're saying this for tonight. This might not be the conclusion of other Achrayim or Rishonim. This might not be their conclusion, but for tonight, this is our suggestion. The derech rush in the way of homiletics. According to the Taz, who says it's mamish the exact same thing, obviously you're going to ask the question according to me, it's not mamish the exact same thing. It's two different things. You raise an orphan in your house. It's not the same thing as giving a biological child. So what does he mean? It's exactly the same thing according to the Taz. Let's ask according to both of them. Okay, so now the Gemara says that you're not allowed back to the ranch. We said that a person is prohibited from killing somebody even if it's only to save their life, right? So killing somebody is prohibited. Now the Gemara says in Bab Metzia on page 58b, the Gemara says like this. Says the Gemara. Tani Tana Kameder of Nachman by Yitzchak Kol Amab Pnei Chaver Barabim. Somebody who embarrasses somebody in public is Ki'ilu Shoifech Damim. It's as if he's spilling blood. Which sounds like the simple reading of the Gemara is that if somebody embarrasses somebody in public, it's as if they killed them, because that's what spilling blood means, right? Because when a person, let's say, kills somebody, let's say they shoot somebody, or they stab somebody and blood comes out, they spilled their blood, they killed them. So somebody who embarrasses somebody else is as if they have killed them. So okay, so according to the Drisha, it means that they didn't actually kill them, but it's as if they killed them. And according to the Taz, it means they actually killed them, right? So we have the same question now. According to the Drisha, what does it mean is as if they killed them? And according to the Taz, it means mamish that they killed them, but he didn't mamish kill them because they're still alive, right? So the same question. So the Gemara continues though. And also, let's ask another question on the Gemara. The Gemara says that somebody who embarrasses somebody, and this question is going to be answered with the next line that we read. But the Gemara is saying like this: if somebody embarrasses somebody, it's as if they spilled their blood. Why doesn't the Gemara just say straight up? If somebody embarrasses somebody, it's as if they killed them. Why does the Gemara say it's as if they spilled their blood? Right?
Is it the semantics that you're?
Is it semantics, or is it specific that the Gemara is specifically referring to this as if they spilled their blood? Is the Gemara trying to tell us something more different than just saying that we wouldn't have known if the Gemara would have just said it's as if they killed them? So the Gemara is like this. Amar he said to him, Shapik Amart, you're saying good. The Chazina lay the Azel Sumka V'asi Chayvara. When you look at a person's face who gets embarrassed, the redness goes away and their face turns white. So you see, what's the redness in the face? L'chayra. The redness is the blood, right? And they turn white. So you're saying spilled blood. It's as if you spilled the blood. So what happens is the blood escapes the face, drains from the face, and now you have white. So you spilled the fellow's blood. Toises over here says, the famous Toises, we have umashim adam etchila, but it's not true. When a person gets embarrassed, first they turn red, then they turn white. So the fish adamim is asim levroyach. It's because the blood collects in order to drain. So a person's face turns white, but first it turns red because the blood collects in the face and then drains. So that's why it's red, but really you're spilling the blood. Shapek Amati, you're saying good. If he would have said it's as if you killed them, he wouldn't have communicated the message of the spilling of the blood. Now that he said the spilling of the blood, he meant to say, as the Gemara explains, the Gemara fears eyes, he meant to say that you're spilling the blood the same way that you spill the blood by the person that you kill that person that you kill when somebody stabs them and the blood spills on the ground. It's the same way you're spilling the blood when it comes in the face. Right? So you'll ask, you'll ask, now let's ask the question. According to the Drisha, who says that it's not mamish the same thing, then how is it similar? So the answer is what? We found a cute little pshat. We found a cute little thing. It's very nice. It fits very nice, cute, right? Because what happens? You spill a person's blood, and here the blood gets drained from the face. That's like spilling blood, very cute. So that's how, according to the Drisha, it's not the same thing, but it's similar. Because in both cases, the blood is like being spilled. But what does that mean exactly? Right? So this is the whole point that we wanted to say this evening. just this point right here. Let's talk this point right here. When a person gets embarrassed, right? They're in a state of embarrassment. But the state of embarrassment we see from this Gemara, and we know from experience, the state of embarrassment is not only a mental experience. The state of embarrassment has a biological reaction, a mamish biological reaction that nobody can argue with. Then when somebody gets embarrassed, their face turns red. It's not an imagine. We're not imagining. That's not an imagination. The mental state is it's such that it triggers, and I'm not a doctor, we don't have any doctors here tonight, but it triggers a biological reaction where the blood leaves the person's face. You hear? So being embarrassed is not just a psychological state. It's also, what is it? A physiological state too. Yeah. So in the psychological state, you could say that you embarrass somebody, you embarrassed them, you didn't kill them. But if it's a physiological state, then maybe you could say you did kill them. They're not dead, they're alive. A person that you kill is dead. If a person gets shot, they're dead. A person that gets embarrassed is not dead. Correct? A person gets embarrassed is not dead. So how does it that the person got killed? They're not dead. Maybe we could suggest the following thing. And this I don't know for sure. I'm not 100% sure of this, but because I'm not a doctor, I don't know. But maybe when a person's blood, physically, when a person's blood gets spilled, there's a certain feeling that a person gets of, let's say, that they're struggling for breath, for balance, for maybe they feel faint. I don't know what happens in the process of dying. When a person is hemorrhaging and losing blood, I don't know what happens. But maybe there's an inkling of the same feeling that when a person gets embarrassed and their blood drains, maybe not only is there psychological pain from the embarrassment, but maybe there is an inkling, an infinitesimal, tad of feeling, of the same exact feeling of like being killed because of the blood, because of the drainage of the blood, because at the end of the day, that's exactly the same thing physiologically, so to speak. Right? And I don't know if I know what I'm talking about. I'm not sure 100% about this, but you do see that the blood drains. So on that, says the Drisha would say, it's as if you killed the person because you didn't kill him, because at the end of the day, he's not dead. But he had the experience on a much lower, almost probably not even feeling level. Maybe they didn't even cognizant of it, but they had some kind of biological experience that's similar in some way on a much lower level to actual death. The only difference is that they didn't die, so it's not they being killed, but it's as if they were killed. I don't know what that is. Khani, I think maybe that's coming from you over there. Maybe you muted. Yeah, I got it. Okay, you hear? You hear what we're saying? Now, according to the Taz, what are the Taz holds that it's mamish the exact same thing? Maybe we'll say, and here we're saying it be Jewish because we have to analyze the Taz and the Jewish their opinion exactly at the source where they're talking. But according to the Taz, maybe the Taz who says mamish the exact same thing, you can ask on the Taz, but it's not mamish the same thing. So maybe the Taz will say that it's mamish the same thing. In that moment, just for that moment, it mamish the same thing on a much lower level. And it can't be that the Taz means actually as if you killed the person. The Chachma Shlomo is saying you fulfilled the mitzvah puravu according to the Taz. I'm not so sure about that. Because according to the Taz, if you embarrass somebody, do you get the death penalty? No. Of course not. Right? So even the Taz will agree. The Taz will agree that it's not mamish the exact same thing. So what does it mean that it's mamish the exact same thing? What the Taz means is exactly what the Drisha means. It's mamish the exact same thing in that you feel the same feeling, so to speak, on a much smaller level as if a person is being killed.
I mean, you can argue that, okay, yes, you won't be you won't be killed, by whips or whatever it is, but maybe you are uh, going to punish that person with a spiritual death of some kind, right? And who knows? I don't know what God does, right? But if I go and humiliate someone and then just, you know, I don't know what happened with Abel and Cain. Was he? In some ways, he was killed spiritually for I don't know what he. I mean, he actually killed his brother, but maybe he humiliated him, or
Maybe you could say that, but but in the adjudication, I mean, obviously it takes a different person to actually stab somebody or shoot them in cold blood, as they say, than to embarrass someone else, right? We would distinguish the person, the two people in terms of their achievement of evil. We would say that one is more evil than the other. An actual murderer is more evil than one who embarrasses people who would never kill somebody, actually, right?
I mean, there
So
are some people that say, in their moment of humiliation, they'll say things like, I would have rather died than go through that humiliation." So
correct,
there. I mean, good.
but that's the reason why they're saying it, because it's as if they died, right?
Yeah.
By the way, I think a lot of people will rank, they're less afraid of death than public speaking.
Exactly.
Because of the
Good point.
embarrassment. It's
Good point.
interesting, because people will rate, they would rather die than have to public speak.
Than to have to public speak,
Because probably embarrassed.
because that's the way the person feels. That's the way the person feels. They say they'd rather die. First of all, they don't know what it means to die. They don't know what it means to die.
No, I know, but
But
idea of
they're saying
embarrassment.
it. At least they're saying it, right? So it's just they're saying that they get that feeling. So in that case, the way that we explained it is that let's go back to the other cases. Let's just look at the other cases while we're at it. I mean, I guess we're forced to argue with the Chacham Shlomo. We have no, not that we're arguing with him, but the way that we're saying it, we're not going to be in agreement with what the Chacham Shlomo is saying. Is that the Chacham Shlomo is saying is that according to the Taz, you fulfill the mitzvah of Puruvo, right? So according to the Taz, if you're not going to be obligated a death penalty for embarrassing someone, why would you fulfill the mitzvah of Puruvu,
Wait, what's the-
of
So
procreation?
Procreation.
Procreation. I mean, why do you have to make a distinction according to the Taz? Why you fulfill the mitzvah of procreation when you raise an orphan in your house, as opposed to
I got
when
the
you
feeling that
embarrass somebody,
Taz-
you don't get the death penalty, right? So the Chacham Shlomo would have to explain that. And the same thing with teaching a person Torah. Does a person teaching a person Torah, you fulfill the mitzvah of procreation? He doesn't bring that up in his discussion, but is that true? Would the Taz say that you actually do? Or would the Taz agree that you don't? But the Taz would say it's mamish like it because it's mamish like it. Because the mitzvah of having a child presupposes the fact that you have to raise them under normal circumstances. When the Torah comes and generally says, I want you to have children, puravu, maluas haaretz, be fruitful and multiply, fulfill and fill the earth. Correct?
Mhm.
So in that case, the Torah assumes that part of that endeavor would entail the raising of the child under normal circumstances. That's what the Torah wants. So the Taz will say it's mamish like it, because what are you doing? You have a child, then okay, you didn't give biological birth to him. That's the easy part, right? As they say. But you're raising him. You're raising him no different than you would raise a child. The same thing. Right? So according to the Taz, according to the Taz, that's what it means. It's mamish like it. But does he actually mean to say that you fulfill the mitzvah of what? I mean, I don't know. Rabbeinu Yonah, for example, we mentioned in the past that Rabbeinu Yonah in his Shari Tshuva, he says that it's not actual murder. He says it's avak. It's like the dust of murder. It's not actual committing murder, but it's a derivative of it. That's what it is.
Okay, but you can argue that the not the multiplier effect, but the domino effect of humiliation could, in some ways, well, the reaction could be equivalent to death. You know what I mean? Like when we think of
Correct.
Purim or whatever it is, or I think it was Purim, where he got invited. And it was a Hanukkah. Or
Yeah, the
it was
Gemara
Purim?
Megillah on it's Purim on the Gemara Megillah on page 7.
So I don't know if that
He actually
means-
killed him though. The Gemara says that he killed him, took a knife and sliced and sliced his throat.
Are we talking about the same thing? Or
Yeah, Rabbi Mazera.
that's what I'm talking about.
Oh, you know, he
Was that-
invited him to the Purim Suda,
Oh, okay, that's it.
and then he got drunk, and and the Gemara says he come Rabbi v'shachted le Rab Zera. Rabbi got up and he shechted Rab Zera. The Gemara says.
I'm not talking about the Purim Suda. I'm talking about the story of Achashverosh, right? With Vashti.
Oh, where Vashti
where
was
he didn't-
embarrassed.
Wasn't it? No, forget that part. What's the story where the guy didn't invite?
Oh, that's the story of Kamsa
Or invited
Bakam.
him and then he kicked him out because he was invited.
The story, the Gemara in Gittin on page 55b, the Gemara there says that there was a story with Kamsa Bakamsa that he was having a meal and he invited the wrong person, and he said, don't send me out of the party. So he was embarrassed there in that
Right.
case, and because of that, the Beis Hamikdash was destroyed.
Right.
So therefore, what?
All I'm just saying is it has the effect almost of death or
Correct,
yeah,
but the person, but at the end of the day, like we said, the person is standing there alive.
right.
You're not going to get the death penalty for that. The rabbinical court, if it's an operation, is not going to give the person a death penalty for that.
Like I said before, it's maybe on a physical level we can't cause death, like what you're talking about, but on a spiritual level, maybe that person
The
has
Gemara
died.
does say, by the way, there is a caveat. The Gemara does say in Sota, as we also talked about this subject, but we're specifically focusing on this point. But the Gemara does say in Sota, page 10b, the Gemara there says that it's better to kill oneself than to embarrass somebody. Not kill oneself, but it's a person also should sacrifice their life not to embarrass someone. The same way that a person should sacrifice their life not to kill someone. So in the mitzvah of Kiddush Hashem, in the mitzvah of sanctifying God's name, martyring oneself not to kill, right? Embarrassment is subsumed within that mitzvah.
Right.
But in the actual meting out of the punishment, if somebody straight up embarrasses somebody without the threat of being killed, they don't get the death penalty.
Yeah. Okay.
So according to all opinions, we would consider it as if not exactly the same thing. There are gradations in evil and in people's actions. And that's why it's as if, because like we explained, because it actually feels that way. It feels as if a person is doing that. Right?
Mhm.
Yeah, David?
So-
What do you want to say about that?
So I think what I hear you saying is it's representing there's enough of that portion that feels like it, right? So I think, is there something about like sleep is like 1/60th of death?
Correct. I was thinking of that. That sleep is like 1/60th of death. That a person who is sleeping has some feeling of being dead, so to speak, according to Chazal. And that's the same thing. So whenever we have in Shas, whenever the Gemara or the Medrash says ki'ilu, it's as if, what they're doing is, and according to our illustration is that there must be somewhere in the analogy that the reason why it's an analogy, the reason why the two elements that are being compared are analogous to each other is because they do share the same exact element of they share this. Let's take our example. Maybe we'll conclude with this, but let's take our example that we didn't illustrate, that we didn't. I don't think we didn't chew that up, right? Yet we didn't beat that horse to death yet. The example of where a person teaches somebody else's son Torah, it's considered as if he gave birth to him. Now, why is that?
Portion of the raising of
So the Gemara says it's a portion of raising a brother. The Gemara says in Bava Metzia, page 33, the Gemara there says that a Rebbe is like a father. A teacher is like a father. And as a matter of fact, the Gemara over there says, I didn't have a chance to look it up. The Gemara over there says that actually we have the Bava Metzia over here. The Gemara over there says that if let's say a father lost an object and the Rebbe lost the object, you're required to return the object of the Rebbe first. you're required to return the object of the Rebbe first. And the reason for that is, the Gemara says, because the reason for that is because the Gemara says, because the father brings a person into Olam Hazeh. He brings them into this world, right? The father brings them into, I'm looking on the wrong page. The father brings them into this world. And the Rebbe brings them into Olam Haba. The Rebbe brings them into the Rebbe brings them into the world to come. Let's see if it's here. Let's see. Avedas, yeah, here it is. It's a Mishnah. The Mishnah, page 33a, Bamitzia. Avedas Aviv, the Avedas Rabbi. If you have a lost object of his father and a lost object of his Rebbe, Shel Rabbi Kodemis. The Rebbe's lost object is first. Shel Aviv Eviyu Lo Olam Hazeh. His father brings him into this world. The Rabbi Shalom Doi Chochma, and his Rebbe taught him wisdom. Maybe L'chai Olam Haba. He brings him into the world to come. So look at this. The Rebbe and the father are exactly the same. The father brings him into the physical world, and the Rebbe brings him into the spiritual world. Why? Because of the Rebbe, the father gives him what? The father gives him his physical body. He provides the DNA, the physical ability for him to exist. The Rebbe gives him wisdom, and that wisdom and the fulfillment of mitzvahs gives him the ability to exist in the world to come, the spiritual world. So the Rebbe and the father are actually both giving birth to the child. They're both giving birth to the child. So if somebody teaches his friend's son Torah, it's as if he gave birth to him. What does that mean? Of course, he didn't give birth to him because he didn't bring him into the physical world, but he does bring him into the spiritual world. Bringing somebody into the spiritual world is to say it's similar to bringing somebody into the physical world. So even though the mitzvah of procreation, and we're going to say not like the Taz, the way that the Rav Shlomo Klug understands him, even though bringing the child into the world to come is in the spiritual world, right? And it's not the same thing as, even though the mitzvah of procreation, of Pru Revu, is in the physical world. You have to have a physical child, right? And the spirit and the Rebbe who brings the child into the spiritual world, it's as if he has a physical child, but he doesn't actually have the physical child because he doesn't have a physical child. It's somebody else's child physically. But it's as if, because he's bringing him into the spiritual world. But with that, he can't fulfill the mitzvah Pru Revu. But the feeling is the same. Because what he's taking a young man and he's creating him into a person that he wasn't before. And that's what the Gemara means by similar. Right? And both the Taz and the Drisha will agree. The Drisha will say it's as if, because it's as if. And the Taz will say it's mamish because you do have mamish the same feeling. The Rebbe has the same feeling. Probably the child also has the same feeling as a biological dynamic between the physical father and the physical son. Yeah. So that's the way we're gonna. Every time we see an example in Shas, whenever we encounter a Chazal, right now we can analyze it and say whenever it says as if, it means that the rabbi saw something in the two elements that are being analyzed, literally the same manifestation of the experience, right? And just to conclude, we tie it into our pasha, like we said, you should live by the mitzvahs, not die by the mitzvahs, except for the cardinal sin of killing somebody. One is not allowed to go and kill someone in order to save themselves. One is also not allowed to go and embarrass someone in order to save themselves for the exact same reason. Because who said that your blood is redder than his blood? that your blood should not be spilled and his blood should be spilled. And spilled how? Even in that small way, through the embarrassment that the blood, who said that their blood should be spilled? Maybe your blood should physically be spilled more than their blood should be spilled in the embarrassment. That's what I was thinking to share with everybody this evening, and I think with that we conclude. Good jobs.
Okay.
I think